Welcome, everyone. My name is Kristen, and I'm on the marketing team here at CloudCheckr. First things first, a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be sent to all registrants. You can also access all of our webinars and register for new ones at cloudcheckr.com/webinars. You'll also see two links attached to this webinar today, one for our free 14-day trial, as well as a link to a breakdown of TriNimbus's cost optimization model. You also can ask questions through this webinar using the question form that you see on your screen. We'll address them in a Q&A at the end. Today we have Irina Gaiman from TriNimbus and Todd Bernhard from CloudCheckr to discuss breaking the constraints of on-prem infrastructure, this time focusing on ways to successfully innovate and save on the cloud. Irina, we're so glad you're here. I'll hand it over to you to kick things off.
Thank you, Kristen. Hello, everyone. My name is Irina Gaiman, and I work as Cloud Solution Architect at TriNimbus. Working for a cloud consultancy company such as TriNimbus means to work with talented and ambitious professionals, facing challenges on a daily basis and learning constantly to keep up with the advances of technology. Today, our discussion is going to be about breaking the constraints of on-premises infrastructure and how we can successfully innovate and save on the cloud. Cloud computing liberated the developers from the boundaries of pre-provisioned equipment. With no heavy upfront cost involved, cloud provides its users with the wide breadth of services that are coming to life in a few clicks. AWS services expanded from just one simple queue service back in 2004 to over 100 services today. With new features announced daily, cloud infrastructure becomes a commodity suitable for virtually every workload. The successful journey from the traditional on-premises environment to cloud-optimized solution depends on the depth of knowledge of the available services, careful planning, level of commitment, and cost control. The outcomes can vary substantially if you have a trusted and experienced partner on your side to guide you through the cloud journey. At TriNimbus, we help companies migrate to the cloud in an efficient and cost-optimized way, while utilizing AWS best practices and latest technology. For the companies running their workloads in the cloud already, we optimize their cloud presence and maintain seamless operations. Even if your company is running a traditional on-premises business, evaluating the world of cloud capabilities with experienced partners such as TriNimbus will turn your journey into exciting, productive, and successful. A few words about TriNimbus. TriNimbus is AWS premier consulting partner in Canada, and it was born in the cloud in 2013. At TriNimbus, we love to share our knowledge of AWS and cloud ecosystem through the meetups we host and run in 9 cities across Canada. Why to move from a fully operational on-premises environment in the first place? Let's look at a few cost-related challenges of traditional on-premises infrastructure. With on-premises environment, to ensure high availability in case of natural disaster, fire, or other types of outages, such as electricity or network failure, companies were forced to maintain a separate physical facility that will operate in case of primary data center failure. While the disaster recovery site will prevent the financial loss that might be caused by the outage of mission-critical operation, its maintenance is very expensive. The cost is driven by the equipment, facility maintenance, electricity, and manpower. When it comes to re-architecting and innovation, on-premises infrastructure leaves little room for experiments. Spinning a Hadoop cluster to give it a go might prove next to impossible in the traditional on-premises environment. The underlying infrastructure is expensive, and your organization will probably refuse to purchase it just for the sake of your experiment only. Even re-architecting your software is a daunting task when you depend on system administrators to provision the required infrastructure, and you cannot do it yourself. When we talk about the cost of on-premises infrastructure, the maintenance cost is one of the major contributing factors. Physical equipment needed to provision the data center, such as racks, wires, power supplies, should all be purchased and maintained. For example, if you need a bit more capacity and you run out of physical space in your lab or in your racks, you will face substantial investment into infrastructure for provisioning just a couple of virtual machines. Cost of human labor to keep the infrastructure functional and protected may be even more substantial than the physical maintenance cost. When dealing with physical, non-scalable environment, we plan for maximum load. High availability in non-cloud environment means provisioning for an expected peak demand and paying an upfront cost for all the resources involved. As a result, the resources will be underutilized during non-peak times and might prove inefficient during high-demand hours. When dealing with physical equipment, the process of adding new capabilities is never a trivial one. Finding suppliers, getting all the approvals, shipping of the equipment, wiring, installation, all this might take any time from a few days to a few weeks. It slows companies down, restricts their agility, and suppresses their drive for innovation. No one will want to wait for a month to try out their new idea. Transition to the cloud can help solving these cost-related problems. Cloud is built for high availability with auto-scaling, health checks, and automatic failover. Disaster recovery solution in AWS can vary from fully pre-provisioned sites to data replication only based on your recovery time objectives. With the cloud, ability to bring your crucial workload back to life in minutes eliminates the need to pay for idle resources on disaster recovery site. In the cloud, you pay for the resources you use as long as you use them. If you want to experiment with the newly released AWS service, measure the efficiency of a modified architecture, or extend capabilities of your running workload, you can do it in the cloud with no upfront investment. The payment for the cloud resources is based on the shared resources usage model, resulting in a low monthly cost, plus the convenience of having someone else update, patch, troubleshoot, and maintain your cloud computing infrastructure. Elasticity of the cloud, its ability to provide additional resources as soon as you need them, makes provisioning for peak demand redundant. In the cloud, you can provision for the expected load and scale out as soon as you need more capacity. Adding resources that you need is a matter of few minutes, and the best part, you can do it yourself. Experimenting in the cloud is easy and fun. It doesn't involve any special skills, deep knowledge, or hard-earned experience. Virtual machines in AWS come to life within minutes with just a few clicks. Experimenting doesn't require detailed planning, thorough security-related considerations, and automation. You just open AWS console, utilize the defaults AWS creates for you, and you are good to go. However, moving to a production environment will require a different approach. Even before you deploy your very first resource, you need to carefully consider the layout of your environment. What accounts will you have? Your networks and subnets, user groups and permissions, authentication and authorization mechanism, integration with your on-premises workloads. These are only a few aspects to consider before your journey starts. Designing the infrastructure is similar to the process of software architecture. Mistakes in design are always proved to be costly and hard to fix in the later stages. Setting the right foundation at the beginning of your cloud journey might be both challenging and intimidating. Doing it right in the first time with external help from experienced partners like TriNimbus can save a lot of money and time down the line. With the cloud becoming a commodity, organizations should pay special attention to the cost involved. Cloud is self-serve. It doesn't involve any purchase request reviews that are part of traditional hardware acquisition. With no governance in place, provisioning 16 cores VM is as easy as provisioning one core. So over-provisioning is a common plight. Elasticity, the ability to scale on demand as opposed to provisioning for a peak, is an integral part of the cloud service. Usage of autoscaling combined with elastic load balancer in AWS will make sure your capacity always matches your demand. Another aspect to consider is right sizing of your instances based on the environment type. Development environment has different requirements than production, and using the same deployment scripts results in oversized or underutilized costly resources. With autoscaling, the cost can sometimes spiral out of control. Autoscaling is an irreplaceable feature to ensure your infrastructure has enough capacity to meet the demand. However, it might prove quite costly. An attack on a web application will result in a heavy workload on the existing resources, and autoscaling feature will spawn more instances to meet the demand. With the ongoing attack, your resources will always scale out and never scale in, resulting in more drain in your pocket. Building the cloud infrastructure with cost in mind and following best practices means utilizing AWS services efficiently. For example, billing alerts, AWS WAF protection, limiting the number of created instances would have prevented cost sprawl in case of denial of service attack. Keeping the cost at bay becomes even more challenging when your cloud presence grows. When your infrastructure is spread across many accounts in AWS or even across cloud providers, having a centralized view, reports, and alerts becomes a challenge and will require dedicated tools in place. TriNimbus partners with CloudCheckr to provide a solution for estates that span more than one cloud. Creating a unified report that gives one-stop view of the resources utilization in different environments, along with saving recommendations, uncovered potential cost savings of thousands of dollars monthly for one of our customers, Farm Credit Canada, who is a leader in loans, business, and financial services in Canadian agriculture. Can we control the cost in the cloud? Limit the usage of most expensive services to the specific user groups and environments. For example, T2 instances might be the most suitable instance type for development environment, while usage of graphics-optimized instances in dev should be restricted or even blocked using AWS IAM policies. Different types of user groups should be assigned roles with different level of access to AWS resources, and group permissions should be constantly audited. To ensure control and accountability, use AWS best practices, such as tags and CloudTrail logs. Cloud is not a magic pill to create cost savings. If your application is a monolith that requires huge expensive compute instances, if it only scales up through increase of RAM and number of cores, it doesn't scale horizontally, moving to the cloud will probably prove be less cost-effective than expected. The lift and shift approach of moving on-premises deployment to the cloud is usually a first step in your cloud journey. Unfortunately, it sometimes leads to disillusion in the cloud cost efficiency. Partnering with a company with extensive cloud experience can help you to hit the ground running and develop migration strategy. For example, if you are going towards data center renewal, we can help you to compare and implement two possible solutions: migrate first and optimize later, versus re-architect and deploy your solution in a cloud-optimized way. Cost savings in the cloud are tightly coupled with the usage of tags, which are resources metadata in the cloud. The challenge of associating the cloud expenses with a particular department, unit, or team can only be handled with tags. Those tags are essential for the effective cost management process and should be carefully considered, defined, and communicated across cloud users in your organization. Moreover, governance should be in place to ensure resources deployment without tags is either blocked or marked as non-compliant, and resource owner gets notified. Utilizing infrastructure as a code approach, with tags being part of automatic deployment, is a recommended practice that will ensure there are no orphaned resources running. At TriNimbus, we treat tags as a vital part of our infrastructure that drives detailed usage reporting and subsequently cost savings. With FCC, TriNimbus went into detailed tagging process to ensure the desired cost granularity is available in AWS reports. Tags are utilized heavily in other routine processes as well, such as compliance checks and patching rollouts. Let's have a look at a few cost-saving opportunities identified by CloudCheckr in FCC Cloud Estate. Average utilization was about 3% across the board, with some 16 core instances running with under 1% of their capacity. FCC reviewed their provisioned estate and planned a resizing effort that will change the size of about 30 VMs and result in monthly savings of thousands of dollars across the clouds. With idle instances identified, we can find the owner based on tags and ask, is this resource still in use? Can it be downsized? Can it be stopped? Development environments that should not run 24/7 could be stopped in the off hours, saving 2/3 of the development environment cost. People tend to forget resources after they stop using them. FCC found themselves with about 100 detached EBS volumes that were incurring monthly storage costs. While the cost of one snapshot might be low, the cumulative number can reach hundreds of dollars a month. Here are a most common use cases of forgotten resources: idle VMs, outdated DynamoDB tables, detached elastic IPs and load balancers, or results of someone's costly experiments, spinning Kubernetes or ECS clusters, or big data-related resources. FCC realized they had an elastic MapReduce cluster running in development environment that could have potentially resulted in more than $5,000 in a monthly bill. FCC removed the cluster right away. Running your workload in production and non-production environments is always a good practice. It helps with safe and fast deployment process and early problem identification. However, it means your production environment is duplicated, resulting in twice the number of resources and thus twice the price. Fortunately, with cloud you have flexibility to size your resources differently based on the environment type. For example, production, development, and test. FCC found tens of over-provisioned instances in a non-production environment and is resizing them as per their real utilization metrics rather than going with one-size-fits-all approach. Combined with the infrastructure as a code approach and parameterization, this one-time resizing effort is converted into sustainable and repeatable process of environment-tailored deployments. When planning for cost-effective AWS usage, take into consideration the following aspects. Consider reserved and spot instances. Take full advantage of elasticity. Do not over-provision. Automate start and stop of non-production workloads when they are not in use. Consider cloud-effective software architecture. For example, go serverless. Use AWS organizations for high-level billing as a start. Consider cost management tool going forward. Define the cost limits and set up cost-related alerts. Our top tips for cost-saving opportunities. Be proactive. Block the use of expensive resources on the account and organization level. Automate and parameterize your deployments for development and production. Plan and execute routine cost monitoring and cleanup based on findings from CloudCheckr. To help companies meet their ongoing cost optimization targets, TriNimbus came up with DevOps Managed Services offering. In the scope of this offering, TriNimbus will work with the customer to meet their cost optimization goals. To make sure the assets are visible and utilization reports are available, TriNimbus will provide actionable advice for cost optimization. It will also help organizations to utilize AWS tools such as Trusted Advisor and Organizations. To learn more about our cost optimization and other managed services, please check out the link that Christian spoke about at the start of the presentation. Thank you, and over to you, Christian.
Thanks, Irina. Very informative. Let's turn it over now to Todd Bernhard from CloudCheckr to get more specific ways you can use CloudCheckr to save you money on AWS. Todd?
Well, thank you, Kristen, and thank you, Irina. The promise of the cloud is very attractive. You just pay for what you use and not a penny more. In reality, though, many resources are incorrectly sized or acquired and then go underutilized or forgotten about altogether. In fact, Gartner estimates that enterprises could be overspending by 70% or more, but there is a better way. There is this fundamental difference in how you approach utilization in the cloud versus the data center. In the data center, you never want to operate above 90% efficiency because then you'd have no headroom for growth. When demand spikes, you would exceed capacity, and then you probably have a long, formal process to add more hardware. So you always wanted to have plenty of headroom, which meant spending more in advance so that you could operate your data center at something like 10% capacity. By comparison, in the cloud, you always have room to grow, so you might as well use all the resources you are paying for and run at 90% of capacity. Nobody wants to spend more money than they need to, especially not when you're running a business and have to meet your margins and show profitability. Running a business today, cloud spending could easily become one of the biggest contributors to your overall operational expenses. Automation allows you to make your changes quickly and frequently, allowing you the flexibility to experiment with different instance types, sizes, and configurations until you find the most cost-effective solution to suit your needs. In that data center, you may have experienced something called server sprawl. As organizations add more hardware to support their applications, it can quickly get out of hand. It's a lot to maintain, so moving to the cloud becomes attractive. But operating in the cloud is not without its own set of concerns. It's true that cloud-based enterprises no longer need to worry about real estate, physical security, server sprawl, firewalls, power, heating, and cooling, traditional data center issues. Still, moving to the cloud can lead to cloud sprawl, and it can be harder to discover. Keep in mind, you could walk around a data center to take inventory, but that's simply not possible in the cloud. The problem is that the cloud is so easy. It makes it so easy to add resources compared to physically purchasing and installing them in your data center. But that ease of use also makes it easy to overspend and lose track of what you've acquired. Amazon, for example, offers a ton of options, which gives you great flexibility, but that can also make it hard to decide. Gartner Group did the math, and they came up with over 1.7 million possible permutations. In fact, Amazon has released more configurations since then, so this number should be exponentially higher. Of course, some of those decisions will be easy to make. For example, if you primarily do business in the USA or Canada, then you can probably rule out a lot of regions. And you probably have standardized on an operating system as well. But that still leaves tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of possible combinations to consider. The only practical way to make such decisions is through automation, and that's where CloudCheckr comes in. Now, when I was in high school, I had a poster like this, and it was fun thinking of all the cool decisions I could look forward to as an adult. But as an adult, every day we have to make millions or thousands of decisions. There's a phenomenon called paralysis by indecision. When you have too many choices, it can be overwhelming. Think of a huge menu at a restaurant like the Cheesecake Factory. I always get the same thing just to make my life a little bit easier. And I have some colleagues who do the opposite. They get a new item every time they visit, and they start it at the top, so eventually they'll have had one dish of everything before they repeat anything. Either way, we've both eliminated a decision and made our lives a little bit easier. Whatever works for you. They say you shouldn't shop for groceries when you're hungry, at risk of overbuying. Well, the same applies to acquiring computing instances. Buying on-demand instances is the most expensive way to use the cloud, but reserved instances, or RIs, require a long-term commitment to achieve discounts and savings. And again, there are a lot of decisions that have to be made when it comes to reserved instances. We'll look briefly at each of these. You're going to specify what brand of Linux or what configuration of Windows. And you don't just request a computing instance, you have to specify which kind, based on your computing needs. Amazon Web Services offers computing devices optimized for general purpose use, computing, memory, graphics, input-output, or total storage. And within each type of instance, you can select a variety of sizes as well. And this is not even an exhaustive list, as older configurations get retired, and you can expect newer models as well. To further complicate the cost of the cloud, instances can be purchased at different rates depending on how and when they are used. When left to individuals across different departments, teams, and business units, purchase decisions are less than optimal. You probably see this phenomenon across your enterprise now. When people book their own travel or when they buy office supplies at retail, they might not be leveraging corporate discounts that you've prearranged. Willie Sutton used to rob banks because, as he said, that's where the money was. The same is true for spot instances. That's where the savings are. You can often save up to 80% compared to on-demand rates, but just like robbing a bank, there are no guarantees you'll get what you came for. You have to bid on spot instances in the marketplace, like an auction, and you might not always get one. Still, spot instances can be a cost-effective choice if you can be flexible about when your applications run and if your applications can be interrupted. For example, spot instances are well suited for data analysis, batch jobs, background processing, and optional tasks. A production-ready system is a system that is built with no single point of failure. The success of your business depends on such a system. Now, a car obviously needs four wheels in order to function as intended. But what happens if one of the tires gets punctured by a nail, resulting in a flat tire? You're stuck. You cannot drive very far with only three wheels. However, this would not be the end of the world. You would either stop on the side of the road and change the tire yourself, or call a tow truck to do it for you. Ultimately, you will have lost some of your time and possibly some money as well. But if a transportation truck, whose sole purpose is to move things around, had a flat tire, that lost time would result in significant loss of business. This is why these trucks have double sets of wheels. Some even carry a complete set of spare tires, just in case such an event occurs. Of course, making this resource available also has a price. The cloud is no different. If you want to host your favorite cat picture website, you might not mind too much if your site goes down for a while. But if you're hosting a mission-critical application and each minute of service downtime results in a huge loss of income, which could easily be millions of dollars for some companies, you will design your solution to survive failures and minimize the financial impact of an outage. There are a number of ways this can be accomplished, each of which has its benefits and associated costs. To limit the possible impact of an outage in a single data center, you should make use of availability zones, or AZs. These are usually comprised of multiple physical data centers that are connected by a high-speed network connection, and they provide a certain amount of resilience to your solution. There have been many cases of whole regions, multiple availability zones, going down in the past, and it is in situations like these that multi-region deployment can come in handy. However, this safety net is not free. Traffic costs are high between AZs and are even higher between regions. Additional complications with AZs contribute to increasing costs too. For instance, deployment becomes more complicated across multiple AZs, and database replication between regions can cause many problems due to the latency. At CloudCheckr, we created ZoneCheckr.com, spelled the same way as CloudCheckr without the E at the end. It's a free service, so you can see where the best coverage is for any particular cloud vendor. It's a free interactive map that lets you toggle on and off the major cloud vendors to see their coverage. Each circle is a region or a city where that cloud vendor has one or more data centers or zones, with larger circles representing more zones. Zones have that high-speed interconnect between them so they can replicate data and failover with low latency. Now, we're talking a lot about cost savings, but we also have to talk about security. Companies sometimes see IT security compliance programs as being like a tax that increases the cost of doing business, rather than as a competitive advantage. And this is unfortunate, since compliance programs are created to produce a positive and productive outcome. Most compliance programs have goals like improving security, decreasing risk, improving quality and reputation, and managing the long-term value of an industry. In short, compliance can be a positive, and when a compliance tool like CloudCheckr also delivers cost savings, then security is no longer a tax, as the tool pays for itself and then some. You may have seen one of those witty bumper stickers that states, "If you think education is expensive, try ignorance." The same is true for security. If you think security is expensive, try getting hacked. Now, a lot of folks claim to offer cloud management, but there are three key elements to total cloud management. Cost optimization, as we've been talking about, to make sure you're not paying any more than you have to, but also security and compliance to avoid security breaches in the first place, which can be much more expensive than any cost savings tool identifies. And invoicing and billing to make sure you are charging departments correctly, or if you are a service provider, generating the most profits for your business. So let's take a look at how CloudCheckr delivers on some of these features. We support over 540 best practice checks. They run all day throughout the day, covering security and compliance, cost management, availability, and usage. Here's one CloudCheckr screen showing some of our self-healing automation capabilities, specifically for S3 bucket permissions, which was probably the most common breach reported in the news in 2017. With this tool, CloudCheckr can detect a security vulnerability and let you fix it by clicking Fix Now, or better yet, select Always Fix. And whenever CloudCheckr detects that issue, even if you're sleeping, it can fix it and send you an email letting you know about the fix. Now, Amazon is great, and to their credit, they have lowered prices more than 60 times since AWS was released a decade ago. As their costs decrease, they pass those savings on to you. However, that doesn't mean you can't overspend. As we've seen, the cloud makes it so easy to spin up resources and forget about them. So our cost savings report shows you how much you could save by following CloudCheckr's recommendations. The report includes idle resources, unused resources, and recommended reserved purchases where you can leverage long-term discounts. And notice that spot management is also singled out, as that can be an area of significant savings. We provide sophisticated forecasts and alerts to track budgets, measure burn downs, and detect deviations in costs. We can alert you based on parameters and trends that you identify, so you don't have to be checking and instead can let CloudCheckr keep you informed. And remember, you can type in your questions during this and we'll answer them at the end. There are at least a couple of ways to find completely unused resources using CloudCheckr. These are resources that you're continuing to pay for but aren't using at all. Look for anything that says unused or not utilized or unattached in the best practice checks. So now that you've gotten rid of unused resources, you want to optimize your use of existing resources. You might have older items that have been replaced by your cloud provider, and they have better performance, sometimes at a lower price. So you'll want to migrate to newer technology. Here's an example of our best practice checks for costs, and specifically idle resources. When you see the settings gear on the right, that means you can click on it to customize the parameters of that specific check. For example, does idle mean 2% or 5% or 10% utilization, and over what time period? You get to decide. Remember, a penny saved is a penny earned, but a penny earned is also a penny saved. The point is, in addition to saving money with CloudCheckr, you can use CloudCheckr to charge more for your services and make a profit. If you're a reseller or a service provider, or just an enterprise, you can charge other departments. You can create charges that are a percentage uplift or a flat dollar amount, or both. Similarly, you can share cloud provider credits across accounts if desired, and pass savings on to your clients and other departments. Right-sizing recommendations is one of the areas where you can achieve a lot of cost savings. In fact, it should probably be called right typing, because in addition to recommending if you should go up or down in a size, we can also recommend different instance types as well, and these also support our Fix Now automation. Another big source of savings is our reserved instance purchase recommendations. These come with a discount that is higher the more you pay up front. So CloudCheckr displays the recommended configuration and gives you the cost breakdown for different purchasing scenarios. We'll show no upfront, partial upfront, and all upfront options, so you can make an informed decision. Again, you can create invoices in PDF or CSV format, grouped by service and or region for one or more accounts. And there are a lot of options, so you'll want to experiment. For example, you can show blended, unblended, or list price rates. You can choose a calendar month or a date range, and you can even show precise values well beyond 2 decimal places. You can also schedule these invoices to be generated automatically. Again, lots of cloud management platforms offer one of these features, whether it's cost optimization, billing and invoicing, or security and compliance. CloudCheckr can help you with security and compliance, but also pays for itself, eliminating that security tax thanks to our cost optimization tools. And now back to you, Kristen.
Thanks, Todd and Irina, for your time today. Now, let's take a look at some of our audience questions here. Todd, you just mentioned Fix Now feature. How is this done, and are there any safeguards with that?
That's a great question. So, in fact, I did a whole webinar just on the topic of automation because some administrators are understandably gun-shy about letting a software tool sort of replace them. But so what we encourage people to do is use CloudCheckr without the automation for a while, and if they find that they are repeatedly doing the same manual task or even clicking the Fix Now button repeatedly, then at some point they gain enough confidence to say, you know what, always fix. I don't need to be here to click a button. CloudCheckr is doing it right every time, and I'm satisfied. However, you may not want to let every employee have that power to do Fix Now. So we support something called workflow automation, where a junior employee might only have a button that says Request Fix. And when they click on that, it goes to a senior employee who has more experience, more training, and that person can say, yes, I agree, and then they can hit the Fix Now or Always Fix button. Or they can send it back to the junior employee and say, I think I need more information, or perhaps you're not aware we're doing a development this month on this, so let's not do that fix. So we do support workflow automation, and that's a great question.
All right, thanks, Todd. And Irina, it looks like this one is for you. This came up back when you were talking about tagging. They're asking, how would you implement tagging enforcement and governance?
We actually implemented TriNimbus, and we are blocking spinning instances or spinning any resources for that matter which are untagged. You can utilize AWS policies and make sure that everyone has to tag their instances, no matter who it is or no matter what permissions he has. This way, identifying who is running instances is really easy, and it leads us to a few cost-related practices we utilize at TriNimbus. For example, as a consultancy, we are not supposed to run long-standing resources for our own purposes. After all, we are not running production workloads. So once this kind of resource is identified, we are using tags to immediately see who is responsible for spinning up these resources and ask the relevant questions. For example, can it be stopped, or why it's still running? So tagging are being enforced, there is governance in place, and they help us a lot with the cost savings opportunities.
Okay, great. Thanks, Irina. And Todd, this one is for CloudCheckr. It says, what is the security context required for CloudCheckr to run or report?
Great question. So the way it works is you would create within your AWS, or the same is true for Azure, your cloud account, an IAM, Identity and Access Management user, for CloudCheckr, and then you provide those credentials into CloudCheckr, and you can use our free trial. I think there's a link in the attachments and links section for this. So you provide that credential, and that credential can be read-only. So again, like the topic of automation before, if you're just getting started, you probably want to just do a read-only access. CloudCheckr does not use an agent. There's nothing you need to install. It's a software as a service, SaaS model. So we will use CloudTrail logs, CloudWatch logs, and the AWS API and the Azure equivalents to present ourselves as you, using the account you give us. And, again, there's nothing you need to install. Once you're satisfied, again, and you say, you know what, I really want to take advantage of some of the Fix Now capabilities, then you would turn that read-only user into read-write and give us those permissions. But I can assure you we have some very high-level agencies using CloudCheckr in a very secure manner, and you should have every confidence going forward. So good question. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Todd. And this one's for TriNimbus. Can I have consolidated billing for my workloads that are spread on more than one AWS account?
Yes, you can. And you can utilize AWS native tools such as organizations, or you can go with the CloudCheckr solution, which will give you one-stop report for all your assets running across AWS accounts. So you definitely can, and you do not need to switch permissions and go from one account to another and log in. You can have it as a one-stop solution. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And CloudCheckr here. If we have a resource that is sized too small, will CloudCheckr identify a recommended change for that too?
Great question. So yeah, while we're talking about cost savings, and obviously if you have something that's oversized and you're not using it as much, we'll recommend going down and saving money. But you know, the opposite is true. You might be outgrowing resources, so we will definitely recommend when you need to go up, and sometimes even across type. So you know, instead of a T2 Nano, maybe it's an M3 medium. So we can go in both directions and so on. So good question.
And follow up there, can CloudCheckr evaluate Lambda functions?
So we do keep track of pretty much all services from AWS, including Lambda. So yes, from a cost standpoint. We also, that's a good question. It brings up with our best practice checks, you can write your own best practice checks that will kick off a Lambda function based on some security event. So it's very flexible. In fact, I didn't even mention the API, which is the application programming interface, which is quite robust. So you could basically, and many service providers do this, write your own version of CloudCheckr or integrate many of the functionalities found in CloudCheckr into maybe an existing app of your own. So while we have lots of CloudCheckr customers and users, there are thousands more who are using it and don't know it because their service provider puts their own logo on it and their own color scheme, or even writes their own application. So very extensible. Thanks. Good question.
Okay, and let's go back to Irina for this one. What AWS service is most likely to cause cost drain?
It really depends on the services and the workloads that the organization is utilizing. It might be VMs, which are expensive and high-end, or if organization is using serverless and Kubernetes or ECS clusters, spinning up one cluster and maintaining it, or a couple of them in a development environment, might prove a very costly adventure and will cause cost sprawl. So I would say it depends on the workload. But anything which is not being audited or monitored will cause drain in the pocket. So the answer, as usual, is monitoring and auditing.
Okay, thanks, Irina. So that looks like about all the time we have here for questions today. We want to have a big thank you to Irina and TriNimbus for joining us today. Make sure you check out all those links that we have below for a free trial with CloudCheckr and for cost optimization tips with TriNimbus. And just a reminder, next week we will be at AWS Summit in New York. So make sure you stop by CloudCheckr's booth, say hi. And Irina, do you guys have any upcoming events here?
TriNimbus will be at the AWS Americas Summit in Toronto. Sorry, hi, this is Andrea. I'm the head of marketing here at TriNimbus. So we will be at the AWS Americas Summit in September. We will also be at the Public Sector Summit in Ottawa and in Vancouver. So come and take a look for us.
Wonderful. Thank you, Andrea. So you guys, again, be sure to check out those links, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.